Inez, before I know it, my mother-in-law said, and drove off in a car driven by a stranger. In my arms, my daughter was limp from heat stroke. Even though I believed my mother-in-law, she locked my daughter in a scorching car and went somewhere. It was such an unbelievable sight, but fact was fact. My first priority was my daughter. Cool her down and wait for the ambulance to arrive. After that, I went home with my daughter, who was well thanks to the treatment at the hospital, but my mother-in-law had not yet returned. After this, I vowed that I would definitely give my mother-in-law a taste of hell. My name is Inez and I am 30 years old. Living with my husband Daryl, who is 2 years older, and our 3-year-old daughter, Jerry, and my parents-in-law. I started living with my parents-in-law from the beginning of our marriage. When I first started living together, I was really worried about what to do if I had a daughter-in-law and mother-in-law problems, but my mother-in-law was very kind and my life had nothing to do with such problems. My mother-in-law had good taste and I had the impression that her senses were very young, and I often thought that I was more sober. Even when we went shopping together, I was often praised at work when I asked my mother-in-law to choose clothes based on her taste. My mother-in-law, who had such good taste, cared about me as a full-time employee and took care of most of the housework because she was a full-time housewife. My share of the burden was mainly to do housework on holidays, and on weekdays my mother-in-law would do everything from preparing meals to cleaning and laundry. That didn't change after Jerry was born. I was planning to continue working after Jerry was born, so I immediately looked for a nursery. However, my mother-in-law said, "Nursery school costs money, doesn't it? I'll take care of her until she enters kindergarten." It was a happy offer, but I declined because it would be too much of a burden on my mother-in-law. "Mother-in-law, I'm very happy, but isn't it hard for you? It's about our own daughter, so we will do something about it ourselves." "Oh, don't worry so much, I've got a lot of energy. I can afford to take care of one child. Besides, you should save money when your kids are little. It's going to cost a lot of money in the future." Mother-in-law. In the end, my husband and I decided to ask her to take care of Jerry in a way that gave in to my mother-in-law's momentum. It's been 3 years since she started caring for Jerry. At the age of 3, Jerry had grown into a feisty girl. Thanks to my mother-in-law, Jerry was able to greet people firmly, and she was not a shy child. Even in the neighborhood, people would say she always greets me cheerfully, and it would be nice to have a grandchild like her. Jerry said, "When I go out with my grandma, a lot of people compliment me, saying that I'm always good at greeting them properly, so I can get some snacks." For a moment, I thought that she was greeting them because she could get sweets, but I knew from my mother-in-law's teachings that this was not the case. Still, she must have been happy to get sweets. On the day she got the sweets, she happily reported to me, so I was happy to hear it. It was just after Jerry turned 3 years old. My favorite earrings are gone. It was selected by my mother-in-law, and my favorite and important earring. After using it a few days ago, I thought I had properly put it back in the original accessory storage area, but when I checked it today, it was gone. What's going on? It may have been taken by Jerry, who has recently known fashion. With that in mind, I decided to ask Jerry. "Jerry, don't you know your mommy's earrings? That was selected by your grandma and my important one." And Jerry said, "Well, I don't know." "Mommy, have you lost something important?" she asked back. I honestly said, "Yes, I thought I put it away." but I don't know where it went. I'll look for it again, I told Jerry. Mommy, you have to look for it surely. With replied, so I regretted a little that I should not had asked her. After that, I looked for it many times, but the earrings never came out. Since then, my personal belongings have sometimes gone missing. It was weird to say that sometimes it's gone, and when I realize it's gone, it came back a few days later. That's why it's sometimes. In the beginning, the things that were lost were only accessories, but then bags and clothes were also gone. What's more, the things that disappear were just the ones that my mother-in-law had selected. None of the things I selected and bought were lost. At first, what criteria did the perpetrator use to take things? I thought so, but before I knew it, it was all things that my mother-in-law had selected. To be honest, I was sad because all the things that were important to me were gone, but I was sure that they would be returned in a few days, so I didn't care so much. However, only the earrings that were lost at the very beginning were not returned. That was a bit pricey, and I wondered that you know that, but somewhere in my heart I was thinking that it would come back. Such strange days continued for about 2 months. I had to go on a business trip suddenly. Until now, I didn't have a business trip because I had Jerry, but due to the circumstances of the other party, I had no choice but to go. When I consulted with my husband and mother-in-law, they said, "Don't worry, I'll keep an eye on her at night." Sometimes that's the case. It's okay, I'm always watching during the day. Jerry is old enough to know what to expect. Please explain it to her before going the trip. By the way, don't forget the souvenirs and set me off quite easily. As my mother-in-law told me, I decided to talk to Jerry. There will be a day when I can't come home for work. Can you listen to what Daddy and Grandma say and wait for my coming home? Jerry replied, "Yes. Good luck with your work, Mom. Also, buy me some souvenirs." I laughed a little because she said the same thing as my mother-in-law, but she said it was okay, so I decided to go on a business trip. The morning of the day I go on a business trip, I hugged Jerry tightly. Jerry looked a little mystified, but I still couldn't help but hug her. If you need anything, you can always call me. With that said, I set off. The work went well. They also knew that I had a small child, so they seemed to be considerate of that. In the evening, I called Jerry. "Hi Jerry, did you have a good day today? I'll be home tomorrow." Then Jerry said, "I was a good girl today, so please buy me a souvenir. I want to eat delicious sweets." "Okay, I see." I couldn't help but laugh at Jerry's typical reply. I decided that I would buy some souvenirs before I got on the plane tomorrow. Next day, I was able to finish work earlier than I expected, and I was able to get on an early flight. I also procured some delicious snacks that Jerry wanted and headed home. When I contacted the company at the airport, I was told that I could go straight home. I was grateful for that and was able to get home much earlier than planned. After that, I fell asleep on the plane, probably because I was tired, and before I knew it, I was at the airport. I hurriedly got off, changed to the train, and hurried home. I remembered that I had forgotten to contact my mother-in-law when I was almost home. But it was almost there, and I thought it would be okay, so I went home. I came back to the front of the house. It was hotter than ever, and I was sweating. And when I casually looked inside the car parked in front of the house, I saw Jerry inside. "Hey Jerry!" I panicked and tried to open the car, but it was locked. I panicked, but I had to go into the house and get the keys. When I thought about it, there seemed to be no one in the house. What about my mother-in-law? Again, there were doubts, but Jerry was the top priority right now. When I unlocked the car and opened the door, a tremendous amount of heat came out from inside. This is bad. After rescuing Jerry and getting her out of the car, she woke up momentarily from an unconscious situation. No, I'm going to get beaten by Grandma. Oh. With that, she closed her eyes again. What does it mean? Again, I wondered, but immediately tried to carry her into the house. Just then, it was the time when a strange car stopped in front of the house. I haven't seen that car around here, and the driver was a strange man. And to my surprise, my mother-in-law was in the passenger seat of the car. My mother-in-law looked at me and showed a scared face. Inez, before I know it, I felt like she said that, but she immediately got upset, told the man to start the car, and went somewhere. Where the hell is she going? All I could think of was questions. No, Jerry takes precedence before I even think about it. On second thought, I carried Jerry under the air conditioner and started using the fan to cool her. At the same time, I arranged for an ambulance. After hearing about how to deal with heat stroke on the phone, I immediately collected ice packs from the freezer to cool Jerry's neck, armpits, and groin. Where ice packs were not enough, ice bags were made with ice to cool them. Jerry never regained consciousness even after opened her eyes once. What if it remains after effect? Just as the worst thought had passed, an ambulance arrived. When she was taken to the hospital by ambulance for treatment, Jerry's complexion, which was limp, seemed to improve a little. I hope this wakes her up. While I was praying like that, my husband and father-in-law, who I contacted, also arrived at the hospital. They must have both come in a hurry. They were drenched in sweat from the heat outside. Even adults sweated so much, but even more so if she was a child. Moreover, there was no way to leave her in such a scorching car. There was no doubt that the culprit was my mother-in-law, who was not present. Because that's when she saw me and ran away. Not long after, Jerry regained consciousness and we cried and rejoiced about it. Jerry seemed surprised and said, "Why are you crying?" By the fact that she regained consciousness, it was said that it was okay to go home, so we decided to go home in the car that my husband rode. I was going to explain after getting settled why Jerry had fallen down after we got home. When I arrived home, I had something I really wanted to ask Jerry. Jerry, what did you mean when you said you were going to be beaten by Grandma before you fell? Have you ever been locked in a car before? Then, Jerry said nervously, "Don't tell Grandma this, because I don't want to be beaten." After said that, I had to be in the car when Grandma went out or a guy came to my house, or she'd slap me. How many times until today? Since little before, I've had occasional days in the car. It was a shocking fact. As far as my mother-in-law was concerned, I never thought she'd lock Jerry in the car, just because she's seeing a man. But since Jerry said it, it must be true. Anyway, the man I saw today was as young as my husband. Does it mean that she is cheating with such a man? I told my husband and father-in-law the characteristics of the man who was with my mother-in-law today. What I saw today was a man in a car that we don't see around here, and he looked about the same age as Daryl. I somehow felt that it was wrong to call it an affair, but my father-in-law said, Is it cheating when she gets in a stranger's car and run away? What the hell did she do? This is a crime. My husband also said, I wonder how my mother met him when he was my age, and as my father said, it was a crime to lock Jerry in the car on such a hot day. I'm sorry for my father, but I think we should file a damage report. Even brought up the subject of damage report. I felt the same way. My father-in-law seemed to understand our feelings, and he said, of course you can file a damage report, because that's what my wife did. There was no sign that my mother-in-law was coming home, so my husband and I decided to go and report the damage to the police. In the meantime, my father-in-law was taking care of Jerry. By the time we returned home after reporting the damage, it was already night. Jerry had a lot going on during the day and was tired and fell asleep. Just as the three of us were about to talk about the future, we heard the front door open. My mother-in-law was back. We went the front door to meet my mother-in-law and dragged her to the living room. And this was where the interrogation time began. I was the first to speak. Mother-in-law, I believed you, but why did you lock Jerry in the car? Jerry got a heat stroke from today's heat. What would have happened if the discovery had been a little later? Have you done the same thing over and over again up to now? Then my mother-in-law began to answer in unusual somber manner. You know, I thought it was bad, but my boyfriend said he didn't like kids, so I couldn't help it. Besides, I had a drink prepared for her today. I certainly remember that the water bottle fell under the seat. However, there was no reason to lock her up. It's impossible to put a water bottle in a place like that. What the hell is going on, mother-in-law? You, a while ago, were not a person who would do such a thing. Is it because of cheating? When I said the word cheating, my father-in-law also opened his mouth. You were meeting a guy who was about the same age as Daryl. Was that cheating? How did you get to know each other? If you're really cheating, I'm not going to forgive you. My father-in-law seemed very angry. My mother-in-law replies nervously. Well, you call it cheating. I can meet people on a dating app. I was kind of hooked on it, so I was able to connect with a young man unexpectedly so I could just play with. What? I heard the sighs of the three people present. What's that? A dating app. What's that? I'm hooked. What was it that unexpectedly connected with a young man? What was just playing? My mother-in-law's excuses were full of points worth mentioning. And after we listened closely, we found out that my mother-in-law paid for all the entertainment expenses. Also, I finally realized now that the earrings my mother-in-law was wearing were the ones that I thought I had lost. Yes, it was because my mother-in-law used it every time she had an affair. Finally, I got the point. What can I say? It was an affair, but it was a relationship where my mother-in-law was completely being played with. And yet, there was really no way that Jerry would be put in danger. I put an end to my depressed mother-in-law. Mother-in-law, you will pay for the crime of endangering Jerry. I have already submitted a report to the police. At best, you can make excuses at the police or whatever. We will never forgive you for doing that. My mother-in-law was stabbed in the last sentence, fell to the floor and started crying. The story after that. My mother-in-law was arrested for abandoning the person in charge of protection. It seemed that she was quietly interviewed and she was tried and sentenced to prison. Life in prison for a while awaited her. She divorced my father-in-law soon. It was unforgivable for my father-in-law that she was cheating on him and endangered Jerry. My mother-in-law was charged alimony for cheating. My mother-in-law seemed to have spent a lot of money on an affair, and it seemed that she was in debt for what it lacked. Therefore, she could not pay alimony from her savings and so on, and she had to borrow money for alimony. And regarding the man who has an affair, he seemed to be connected to my mother-in-law only with a message application, and she did not even know the phone number, let alone the address. When he heard that my mother-in-law's affair was discovered, he immediately went missing. My father-in-law was disappointed that he could not claim alimony from her cheating partner. At the very least, if I had remembered the license plate number of her cheating partner's car, we might still have found him. However, I always thought that my mother-in-law was not good enough to fall for such a man. On the other hand, as to us, as soon as Jerry got better, she went to nursery school. It was just because there was a vacancy at a nearby nursery school. I also dissolved my cohabitation with my father-in-law and started living with my family of 3. I thought that living in that house with memories of my mother-in-law all along would not be good for Jerry's mental health. My father-in-law also said that he would put his house for sale and start living alone in an apartment. I would like to maintain a good relationship with my father-in-law and do my best so that the 3 of us can live a peaceful and lively life.